Thank you so much for coming back to the dinner table again. Here we are, week 2, after some major changes at the dinner table. And this week, I want to welcome some guests to the dinner table. I have with me my friend Kristin and Sean. Hello, guys.
Hello.
Welcome to the dinner table.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So glad to have you guys. We're going to talk about the food we cooked here in just a minute. But first of all, I have to talk about Caishen, my dog, and the haircut that he got. You guys got to see him when he showed up at the door barking at you. What do you think about Caishen's lovely new haircut?
I think it looks great.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
I like it. I like his floofy ears
Thank
and
you.
tail. It's
My
great.
parents said the same thing this morning. I walked over and I was like, he looks like his mom gave him a haircut. It's actually, he's like flat on top, and then he has poofy ears, and he's all like, I haven't really given him, I need to do some more work on it, but basically because of some of these changes that have happened, I just don't have the finances right now to actually take him to the groomer, because he was going to the groomer once a month.
Well, at least not
So,
like a bowl cut or something like that. It's better than that.
thank you for making me feel better. I mean, I appreciate your kindness. That's very good of you. We've also, you guys, when you guys got here, you got to see the sheep and the longhorns. You were playing with the
Oh, yeah.
longhorns.
Oh yeah, they
Yes.
came up on us quick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you? What was your thought about they ran up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Have you ever
Yep.
seen anything like that before?
No, not that big and not that fast.
Have you? What do you think about the size of their horns? Is that are
They're
you
massive.
It
right?
seems very cumbersome. Yeah.
That it is. That's exactly what I mean, and you see him walking sometimes in the summertime, especially that one that has the really big horns, and he's just like lumbering along, and he's like dragging his head, and you're just like, my God. But they're so smart with their horns, the way they move them around and stuff like that, and they're very friendly pets for us. So I have to warn people, like, you can't, like, he's gonna want to come up and like let you pet him, and he's gonna whack you in the head with your horn, with these ginormous horns that your arm is, I promise you, your arm is shorter than these longhorns. So of course we've got all the animals out here. We talk about them every week, and the rabbits and the sheep have come up in the conversation recently. You guys know a lot about what's going on with the rabbits. I'm having to kind of talk out and think out with, of course, my parents and everything, the sheep. So we have Dorper sheep out there. You saw my 2 boys.
Mm-hmm.
And we were about to get some ewes, and this has changed some of that. This has changed some of the things we're doing with the sheep. I don't know for sure. I've asked the guy that we originally partnered with to just come and get them right now, so that I can like start over later on. But I'm still not 100% sure what's exactly going to happen. But you guys actually came out here to the farm last Easter for the goat roast.
Yeah,
Oh,
we
yeah.
did.
And that was like the key for why we were planning to do, like, that was the reason why we wanted to do it. Yeah.
Okay.
So that we can, process our own and have our own like goat roasts. And
Yes.
I mean, if, we'd be able to have meat available for other people too. But that, after I saw that last year, and I grew up raising lambs and like 4-H and anything. Do you guys have any experience with raising 4-H animals or anything
My
like that in your
sister
life?
did rabbits
Yeah.
in high school, and
Uh-huh.
we just recently got rid of the last one.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, it took a
right?
while.
Yeah,
That's
I was in
great.
an ag class for some reason in high school.
some reason, yeah.
Yeah.
It's because you're from Texas.
Yeah, of
Are
course.
you from Texas?
It's
I didn't even.
mandatory.
Yeah.
I was born in Maryland. I grew up in the Dallas area, so it
Gotcha.
was suburbs all the way. But
Yeah,
we
yeah.
wound up with 25 chickens and
Uh-huh.
out at the ag barn. So
Yeah.
that's about all for me.
Yeah. Well, I raised sheep when I was a kid in 4-H, and so I was like, yeah, let's do it. And then the goat roast happened, and I was like, okay, this sounds like. And I'm really enjoying lamb. I'm enjoying lamb meat. We've got
Yes.
Turkey Hollow Farms, who is the people we buy meat from. I grabbed some more meat from them this week. And we're actually, again, going to talk about the lamb that we cooked tonight here in just a little bit. But so the sheep are kind of a questionable thing that's happening still. The rabbits, as you mentioned, that your sister raised rabbits, I actually do have the meat rabbits. We're going forward with that. We talked about it this morning. My dad and I talked about, getting the cages that they're going to need in the fall for the bunnies to have them, and then I'll learn how to process rabbits. So I'm learning how to do a lot of things, like create podcasts and do YouTube videos up to you. I'm learning how to cook. Like, I'm learning, like, I had this wasn't the plan, you guys. This wasn't the plan. Hey man, you won't catch me lying. It's unanswered questions. Last week, when Jennifer was here at the dinner table, we spent a little bit of time talking about nutrient density, and I had brought up that the way that you test the sugar in your grapes is through a Brix meter. But I was wondering whether there was an actual like tool that you would use because we talked about nutrient density. And so I wanted to look up for unanswered questions the idea of how do you test for nutrient density when we're dealing with wanting to know better how to grow vegetables that are actually going to be in the nutrient density that we need. So we're not just eating a bunch of kale, we're eating kale that actually has the nutrients you need in it. Is it being grown in a farm on a place where there's enough nutrients in the soil to be able to get access to that? But how do you test that? And so I did look it up and I came across one website for a farm. Farm is called Cedar Circle Farm and Education Center. And they were doing a special testing for nutrient density on their vegetables. This was back in September of 2020. And what they said is that the tool that they use is called a spectrometer. And the spectrometers work by sending out a beam of light to the vegetable. The light is then reflected back to the machine and analyzed. Each vegetable has its own unique signature based on the wavelengths of light that are reflected back to the spectrometer. When I brought that up to you, Sean, you actually gave us a little bit of information because you have a background in brewing beer.
Well,
Yeah.
brewing beer and my bachelor's degrees in biochemistry as well. So
Hmm.
I've used a spectrophotometer, a spectrometer before
Hmm.
in school settings.
Right. Do you have experience testing things? Have you ever tested anything before?
We did for school, but the basics, the way it works is that's going to shine a beam of light at
Hmm.
whatever you're looking for, and whatever you're looking for is going to interact with that light in a particular way, either absorb some of that light, reflect a certain amount back. So by looking at what's been reflected back to your sensor, you can figure out how much of what you're looking for is actually in there. So each molecule, each nutrient is going to interact in a different way. So if you know the wavelength of light that you sent, you just look at what came back, and then you can determine what's in there
Well, and
in
so
the
then
most simple terms.
yeah, yeah, thank you. The refractometer,
Yeah.
the Brix meter, is basically what we were talking about last week. And I found another website, Learning and Yearning, and they said that according to Weston A. Price Foundation, which is another very valued
Nice. Yeah.
Mhm.
nutrient dense food education organization, nonprofit organization. They said the Brix measures a combination of sugars, amino acids, oils, proteins, flavonoids, minerals, and other goodies. So
Oh.
to me, it sounds like we probably could get that out of the Brix meter. I think that I'll probably do a little bit more research and dig into this a little bit more. And I mean, because how cool would that be able to actually be able to take a carrot and because the other farm that I talked about just a minute ago, the Cedar Circle farm,
Mhm.
they are sending their data in so that we get some data sets. And so I think that that's a valuable thing that there's just enough people that are out there interested in it because one of the people that I listen to in podcasts and stuff like that, his name is Zach Bush, and he's very much a leader in talking about regenerative agriculture. He's a doctor, and he talks about the idea of when he first started out on kind of his nutrition base for his business as a doctor, as an MD, that he would just encourage his patients to eat more kale and whatever, but he was finding that they were still running into a lot of the same issues. And so one of the things he was learning, and we talked about this a lot in some of the past episodes when we were talking about the autoimmune protocol diet, when we were talking about regenerative farming and the things like that that we've talked about, was that you have to also be eating food that actually has nutrients in it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And LaDonna, that was one of the things she mentioned was like, number one, eat real food, eat food that actually has nutrients in it because your body, you can eat all the vegetables in the world, but if they don't have the nutrients that you're seeking, then it doesn't really,
Right. Well, and
much
I'm sure
matter.
this has probably come up before, but a lot of that starts with the health of the soil. If those nutrients
Exactly.
aren't in the soil to begin with, there's
Right.
nowhere they're going to wind up in that vegetable. So
Right.
yeah, like you said, you can eat all of these vegetables you want, but if they haven't had the right environment to grow in, they're not going to do anything for you.
Well, and also the time from harvest to actually consumption. So if it's in a can, or if it's been frozen, or if it's been, cultivated in such a way to make it maintain its longevity on a shelf in some way, uh, you're probably not going to have as much nutrient quality available to your body at the time of consumption as something that you go into the garden, pick it, and consume it immediately. So
Right.
that's another like huge factor in,
Mhm.
I think, like that nutrient density is it still alive?
Well, and not
Right.
just yeah, not just
Yeah.
eating healthy or eating organic, but eating locally to make sure you're getting it as fresh as possible, not just for taste, but also for those nutrients.
Yep, yep, and that's kind of the stuff we talk about every week. So speaking of that, I want to be sure to tell everybody that I do have a lot of produce coming out of my garden right now. Lots of squash, lots of onions. Of course, I still have carrots and lettuce and things like that. I'm doing the larder investment deliveries. It's like a CSA type of thing. I talked about it a little bit on a live today, but I'm going to be kicking those off again in May. And one of the things I want to make sure and let everybody know on the audience is that that's limited to just a few families and a few restaurants. And I usually sell out of it pretty quickly. But what I would like to do is get a list of people that are interested in being on when I have extra bags of produce to deliver. If you're interested in that, please be sure to like message me or DM me or whatever, any of those ways of getting in touch with me and let me know because I'm going to have a lot of produce and I think it's just going to continually get better. And because of the regenerative methods that I use, you guys got to walk around the garden and see how real the
Yes.
like
Oh yeah.
actual regenerative methods that are going on with the flowers and things and the way those are all growing in, and the flavor of the food that we ate tonight.
Absolutely.
Yes, you can tell that there's nutrient density even just by that. So I want to make sure affordable access to nutrient dense food is a top priority in everything that I've done over the last 15 years of my life. So I want to make sure I get that food out to people. So check out my website at aislynncampbell.com or just reach out to me about that whenever you get a chance. I made kale chips and I was able to share those with you
They were
tonight.
Yeah, they're
so
great.
good.
I love making them. They're addictive, right?
Yeah, I had to like put the lid back on it because I kept snacking on them.
They're a really, really easy recipe. My best friend had told me that she had an overabundance of kale, and she's like, "What am I going to do with all this? I'm going to make some kale chips, but I have way more kale than I need." And with my grocery shopping became like a whole different. Did I mention this wasn't a part of the plan? Like, all of a sudden, I'm penny pinching and whatever. But also, with the autoimmune protocol diet that I've been doing over the last couple of weeks, over the last couple of months more so, I have been really looking for like salty snacks. Like, I think that that's the hardest part for me. So I eat those seaweed chips.
Oh yeah.
Do y'all like those?
Yeah, oh
Those are great.
yeah.
I am addicted to those
Yes.
things. Well, what I found is that if I've got plenty of kale, then I can make that, and that replaces the seaweed chips for a little while, for a very short amount of time, because I can eat all of those in one sitting.
And less plastic.
Have y'all Oh my god,
The packaging on those is pretty
that is
intense. Yeah, for like
insane.
8 pieces
You're
of
right.
seaweed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you brought that up because yes, I feel bad about that
too.
much plastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny too because we did talk about that on the podcast a few episodes ago. It's like, well, what are some of the things you've noticed? And I'm like, I make more trash. That's what
Yeah.
I've noticed. I make more trash.
Mhm.
I hate that. So my recipe for making kale chips is nutritional yeast, olive oil, and then I use a little bit of my cilantro salt. And it doesn't even take you can do it in like a couple of hours on the dehydrator. I have two different kinds of dehydrators. So I make those very easily. And you want to keep your temperatures down to like, I think 105 or like the lowest setting temperature you can. There might even be a temperature setting of like 95. It's just what I try to set things at. That to keep nutrient density, like you mentioned, the more
Mhm.
you do to something, the more you process it or prepare it or cook it, the less nutrients that it has in it. So if you're trying to do medicinal flowers or kale chips or anything like that, you want to try to keep as much nutrients in there as possible. So those are a quick and easy thing that I've been making a lot of. I know that there are other people out there. Do you make kale chips at home?
Well, I was just gonna say the dehydrator sounds like the way to go because
Yeah.
I've done them before in an oven,
Yeah.
but I overcrowd the pan, and
Yeah.
then it's a little bit of an ordeal to get them just right. I'd
I
love to be
have
able
a
to just set it and
feeling
go.
that the humidity down here causes us issues with making dried stuff in the oven. Like I
Mhm.
find that a lot. And our friend Cassie, she
Mhm.
said that she uses I'm having a brain fart. I can't think of the word. She's gonna yell at me on this. She's gonna be listening to this podcast and she'll be like, "It's called the air fryer." That's the word
Oh,
I'm looking for.
yeah.
Yeah, she uses an air fryer. So a lot of people use the air fryer. But I think I have two dehydrators now. One of them my mom collected, and then I ended up with it because I use it all the time. But I dehydrate stuff all summer long. All my flowers, I dehydrate those so that I can make like potpourris. I make salts in the oven. That's how I make salts. Do you make salts?
Yes. We've done
Yeah.
it once.
we did it once. Yeah.
It's super
I'm
easy.
sure we can do it
Yeah.
better the next time.
I do an 80-20 recipe where it's like 80% of the herb, 20% of the salt. So it's really
Oh,
a seasoning rather than a salt, but the salt still brines it. But
okay.
you're cooking it in the oven anyways. I set it to my lowest temperature, which I think my lowest temperature is 170.
Mhm.
And then I just have to like stir it. So I make like that cilantro salt that we ate on our salad tonight.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I make that with either that or coriander. I put in garlic and onion. And then if I'm trying to make some spicy, like I make a pizza salt where I use habaneros in it.
Mhm. Ooh.
Yeah, that's my favorite pizza salt.
Ooh.
Although I can't eat pizza right now, and I also can't eat peppers right now. So,
Well, and doing
but
the salt's probably easier in the oven because it's
yeah,
already drier to begin with. Whereas with the air fryer, you want that air circulation or the dehydrator because
yeah,
with the kale and all that, it's
yeah,
so much moisture in there.
yeah. Well, it's a quick snack turnaround, and so I'm enjoying making that. I also made a chicken and vegetable soup the other night. So after Jennifer and I took the whole chicken in the instant pot, we cooked it down, right? And I got taught how. Vicky taught me how to do it, and we pulled it apart. And then I had like the meat that was left, and we put that in the refrigerator. So we're talking like 4 meals, 4 snacks, like 4
Yeah.
lunches. Like I ate a ridiculous amount of food from one whole chicken. Of course, it's just me, of course that changes things too. But the resourcefulness of that. So then I took what was left on the bone, and instead of making broth with it, this time I just made myself another chicken soup and just cooked that down and threw in sweet potatoes, Brussels sprouts, like sound familiar, right?
Yeah,
Basically
yeah,
everything,
exactly.
celery, just like threw all of this stuff in there. And I've been eating on that for 3 days. And so it was a matter of just basically no recipe. I don't have any recipe. I just threw it all in and then
Mhm.
cooked it. I have been using fennel a lot lately. I've really liked that. My fennel's been growing well. And I'm not talking about the pod of the fennel. I'm talking about the fennel fronds.
Mhm.
I also am putting yarrow in a lot more soup. Do
Hmm.
you guys use yarrow for anything?
I've only used the powder a couple of times, like to make like a thickening, for
Yeah.
like
Like a
gravy
roux or
and stuff.
Oh,
something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
nice.
but it's been a long time.
Gotcha. Okay, so yarrow is a plant that grows really well in our gardens here if you get it planted in the springtime. I have big bushes of it, like massive bushes. And of course, then the flowers grow, and the flower is the most medicinal part of it. And it gets used a lot for gardeners or chefs or whatever. People will use yarrow to stop the bleeding when you cut yourself. So you can put
Ah.
so it's what's the word, coagulant, when you
Mhm.
Mhm.
stop, the
Mhm.
blood stops. Okay, so this particular medicinal plant is good for that.
Hmm.
Well, Cassie and I were learning about it and talking about it the other day. Cassie's getting a lot of shout outs tonight, by
Yeah,
the
she
way.
is.
She was teaching me that yarrow is a wound seeker. So when you eat it, it actually goes into your
Oh.
system and like helps heal things inside of your system. So I've been taking it and putting it in my smoothies and have been trying to get it out to more people, also particularly women, because one of my autoimmune things that I've been dealing with is heavy, heavy overflow
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
menstrual overflow, if you guys don't know what I'm talking about. So I'm trying to come up with any way to heal that. So I've been throwing it in my smoothies and I've been putting in my soup and just kind of like stripping the leaf down with like the little bitty fronds that are on it. It has a flavor. The stem of it is a little bit of a bitter flavor, but the rest of it isn't like a shocking flavor. I would say maybe like a mustard green, like a young mustard
Huh.
green.
Yeah.
It doesn't really change the flavor to me. I think it would be interesting because even when like Joe was making the stuff and me making it as well, neither one of us have noticing it in the flavor of things. I would love it to have some people who aren't used to eating as strictly as we are eat some of the foods that we're trying out to see how your flavor profiles are,
Mhm.
because mine are very different than the average person, because I don't
Yeah.
eat sugar and I eat
Mhm.
all kinds of vegetables and I eat all kinds of bitter things.
Mhm.
So I know that my flavor palette is going to be very different than the average like eater,
Oh yeah.
I'd be curious to see a little bit more about that.
Well, and going back to that's one of the anybody who's talked to me about food in the past couple of months, I'm a big proponent of like soups and stews. I feel like they're
Yes.
super easy to
Yeah.
do. Like you said, the resourcefulness factor of it, you can throw whatever in there. And it's a great way to, I'll use the word sneak some extra vegetables into your diet
Yeah.
because you cook them in a meat broth. They
Yes.
taste like meat. Everything's good. So
Exactly.
it's a really great medium to have a little bit more nutritious food.
Yeah. Well, and you were mentioning that as I talked y'all into coming over to do this tonight. And then not only did I say, like, come over, but I do this thing where I'm like, come over and have dinner with me. Do you want to cook? Like,
Yes,
so
yes, he
yes,
does,
yeah.
always.
So you're like, okay, let's try a hash. And I had mentioned that I'd picked up some ground lamb at the farmer's market the other night from Turkey Hollow. I thought, like, okay, I've got all these vegetables. You're like, I can play with anything. Let me
Yeah,
just
well,
see what I
first of all,
have.
is that the proper term? We just call it a hash. I don't know if that's like is that a
That works for
thing? Is
me.
that
No,
okay?
that works for me. I think when you just throw anything in that you
Yeah.
have with like some ground meat or whatever,
Mhm.
I think that's pretty,
Yeah,
standard.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, it went really well. We had that ground lamb, which I've really been liking lamb recently. I know a
Yeah.
lot of people think it's got a strong flavor to it, which I don't know. I really enjoy.
That's letting people with a different taste profile taste things that we eat all the time. That's part of what I'm talking about. But I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
part of it is the quality of the Dorper sheep from certain people, kind of like us.
Mhm,
I think,
mhm.
I don't know. Do you guys get your stuff from? Where do you get your meat from? Where are you getting your meat from?
All
All
over.
over.
We've
Yeah.
tried several different places. Most recently, we bought a half a cow from Clarabelle Cattle Company.
Mm-hmm.
We got a whole hog from Turkey Hollow,
Mhm.
Okay.
and then we've got little just parts from
Yeah.
people here and there as well.
Gotcha, gotcha, gotcha. Well, I'm curious to know, because I know that it always makes a difference in like how they feed them, what land they're eating on, the
Oh, yeah,
soil of the
for
land that they're eating
sure.
on, that too.
Terroir.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay, that throws me into a completely different subject. You guys got ducks. You just said you got ducks the other day.
We're waiting for their arrival.
Okay, well,
Yes.
tell me a little bit about that.
Well, we just took a trip to France recently and apparently really liked the duck. So
Uh-huh.
we were talking to our friend. Shout out Cassie.
Hey, girl.
That chick is getting it
Yeah,
tonight.
and she's got some ducks which she raises for eggs. So
Uh-huh.
we not so gingerly asked if we could eat one of their ducks. She's like, "No, we love those ducks, but if you want to get some more, you
Yeah.
can raise them here, and we
Uh-huh.
can see how that goes."
She's our
Yeah.
duck surrogate.
Yeah.
She's our duck surrogate. That's funny. So you got you saw my Muscovies that are
Yes.
strays, the
Yes.
Egettese. Everybody knows the
Mhm.
Egettese. So that's you got Muscovies or
We've got
Muscovies, or we're
those,
not
and
sure
yeah,
what the
I'm not sure how to
pronunciation
say it
is,
now.
but yeah.
But we've got 10 of those coming, and also 10 of the jumbo Peking, and then you cross those, and you get something called a moulard or a mule duck, which is what the French use for their confit and foie gras and things like that. So we thought it'd be a fun experiment. So we got 20 ducks coming, and
I'm so excited.
luckily they're not staying at our house, but Cassie will take good care of them.
I'm
Yeah.
so excited because I am happy to know that I've got some friends that are taking on the ducks. So, because I've been telling everybody I'm planning on getting some more ducks so that we can minimally have eggs, but
Yes.
I'm all about figuring out how to eat the meat of whatever we have out here because, well, I mean, it's resourceful, it's better
Absolutely.
for you. We know the nutrient density of the food that they're eating off the land that they're eating off of.
Mhm.
We're doing the processing, and also we can make amazing food that, can you even buy that at the stores sometimes here in our area? Like, do
It's
y'all
They've
try to buy anything like that?
they've got them like you can get a whole duck, but
Uh-huh.
they're like 30 or 40 bucks, right? They're pretty.
Mhm.
They're
Oh.
not cheap.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Well, we're gonna be in the rabbit business very soon. So,
Woohoo.
if you guys like rabbit, we can maybe trade a rabbit for a duck.
Yes,
That
Yeah, it
sounds like,
sounds great.
definitely.
yeah, yeah. Tell us a little bit about what all you put into dinner tonight.
Yeah. So we had, like we said, ground lamb, just some onion and garlic in there as we sautéed that, and we tried to do a traditional kind of lamb thing with rosemary and a little bit of mint from the garden as
Mm-hmm.
well that the girls went out and harvested. And then you seem to be pulling vegetables out out of every drawer and cubby in
Yes.
the kitchen.
Yes.
So I think we wound up with some yellow squash, some zucchini squash, Brussels sprouts, sweet
Yeah.
potato.
Uh-huh.
What am I missing?
Some onion and garlic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
more onion and garlic there, and then what we've been doing,
Greens.
and then at the end of our hash, what
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
like to do, so we brown the meat, set that aside, throw the
Mhm.
veggies in there. If there's some that cook longer, of course, put those in first, and then just kind of
Yeah.
add as you go along. Throw the meat back in there, and then at the very end, we'll turn the heat off, put a handful of chopped greens on the top, put the lid on, and let those kind of steam for a couple minutes, and then mix that in. And that's a great way to sneak in some extra greens or another use for all that kale you've got as well.
Yeah, and so that spinach came from the farmer's market as well, and so all the stuff except the Brussels sprouts and the garlic, was all grown locally on a farm with the stuff that we made tonight, and it was fantastic. And I think the best part about it is, actually, we said this last week, and it's going back to the nutrient density, is that the ingredients are such delicious ingredients that you don't need a lot of like salts and other types of things. I mean, yes, we put a little bit of salt in it, but it already has so much flavor that it was
Mhm.
an excellent dish. I was really impressed with it. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks. Thanks for cooking for me, Sean,
Not a
because
problem.
I might need a man to cook around from time to time. I might have gotten used to that. I'm just saying.
Well, and speaking
So
of like the natural flavors too, when we first got together, my diet's changed a lot since I've been with Kristin here. I was big into sauces. I wanted to put a sauce on everything or have
uh-huh.
something to dip.
Butter or
Um,
cheese on everything.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But
Hmm.
now, like you said, once you get the food that's actually got the flavor in there, yeah, a little salt and a little butter, and just to help bring those out, is
Yeah.
that's all you really need. And
Yeah.
keeping it simple, and we just try to complicate things too much with a lot of the meals we try to make.
And I think that that's a really good part of like the AIP and making it simple. I think that we've talked a lot over the last several weeks about all the different things that we've been cooking, or several months now, all the things that we've been cooking for my special diet. And we've done some special things. And, Joe made pizza, and we've just, done wings with special sauce, and, all kinds of things that we've done. But I also think keeping it simple and just throwing in what you have is just as equally delicious. And the ingredients themselves make up for any lack of anything that you might. So I want to come back to that, because I know that one of the most complicated thing for people with the AIP, or any kind of special diet, is this idea that it has to be so complicated. You have to have a complicated recipe, anything like that. I thought that that was an interesting way to look at the last couple of weeks of the recipes that I've been making, because as I'm transitioning into cooking again for myself, just trying to keep it simple and just using what I have. And it's a great time of year to just use what you have, because the spring vegetables
There's
is,
so
Oh
much
yeah.
everywhere now, and
yeah.
everything looks beautiful, and it doesn't have to be complicated.
Yeah, wasn't complicated at all. One of the things that we were talking about, I spoke to LaDonna this week, and I think I'm going to have her on in a few episodes to talk about reintroduction of foods, because I'm getting to the point where I'm starting to be ready, mostly because of budget. Like, I'd like to add eggs back in, and I've got green beans. I'd like to get that in, but also, yeah, because my garden is starting to produce. I harvested an eggplant today, and I'm harvesting green beans, and there's all of these things. So I was looking at trying to get close to the 90-day mark with it. And then you mentioned something about 120 days. And I really,
Yeah.
that
So it takes 120 days for all new red blood cells to be formed in the body.
Mhm.
And when we're talking about food sensitivities, food intolerances, allergies, what have you, when you're cutting those out of the diet, you really want to give yourself truly 120 days of being away from those foods completely in your
Mhm.
diet. That way we have all new fresh red blood cells that haven't reacted to any of those particulates in the body.
Uh-huh.
Because we do
So
have
when you talk about reacting to the particulates, she's talking about that, where we talked about the gut barrier membrane has been broken down. Dysbiosis is causing things that are inside your gut to go into your bloodstream, and then to set
Mhm.
off all the red flags that
Yep.
cause the autoimmune disorders to occur,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly. So once you've cut that out, when you give yourself that 120 days, now everything's, calmed down, not reactive. So
Mhm.
then we have healthy, optimally functioning red blood cells that can then, take that nutrients into your cells, into your tissues, and just be providing that nutrients instead of dealing with, combating with that inflammatory response,
Right.
So we get, of course, when you cut food sensitivities out of the diet, you're going to see fairly quickly, most people, some kind of improvement. But
Mhm.
after that, good 3 to 4 months, you really get to the point where now not just the cells are getting good nutrients, but we're starting to see tissue changes in the body,
That's what
right?
I want.
You
Uh-huh.
want those tissue changes.
Yeah.
And of course, every organ system, every type of
Uh-huh.
tissue is going to take a different amount of time to regenerate, right?
Uh-huh.
However, you really start to see those tissue changes months into having those food sensitivities removed from your diet,
Right.
whatever they are, right?
Yeah.
Because everyone's got their special, special thing.
Right.
But we really then, so after those cells get, good healthy nutrients, then the tissues get good nutrients and start changing quality of the tissues. And then at that year mark is
Mhm.
truly where we have full organ shifts and
Uh-huh.
changes. And so when I was in my first practice and working heavily with nutrition,
And what's your practice? Tell us that.
so I am a chiropractor,
Mhm.
and currently my practice is focused on pregnancy and infants.
Okay.
But in my first practice, I was working in a practice that was chiropractic, but heavily focused on nutrition,
Uh-huh.
and alternative healthcare. So
Right.
we
Yeah.
did acupuncture and energy work, and we did muscle testing and supplementation and foot baths and all kinds of fun
Mhm.
stuff to
Yeah.
help your body get back on track. And
Mhm.
so with the nutrition, a lot of people were taking things out of their diet but not giving it enough time. And so, if you cut something out for a week, you're not going to see significant changes typically.
Right.
Once you cut them out for 3 weeks,
Uh-huh.
that's a totally different story because we have delayed food sensitivity reactions that can take up to 3 weeks before you even have a reaction to it.
Right.
So if you have eggs one day and then 3 weeks later, you're
Mhm.
still having headaches. Um, well, maybe that's from that one time that you had it 3 weeks ago. But if
Uh-huh.
you don't give yourself that amount of time,
Mhm.
then you never really know what it truly is. So when you're reintroducing foods,
Right.
you do want to give yourself not only an abundance of time to allow your tissues to not just be away from them, but to truly start to heal and
Right.
repair.
The healing. Yeah.
Exactly. But then when you go to reintroduce, the big thing is choose one thing, the
Mhm.
biggest
Yeah.
thing that you think is going to make that lifestyle change easier
Uh-huh.
for you.
Uh-huh. Like eggs would be the thing
Eggs,
for me. Uh-huh.
exactly. Great source of protein and
Yep.
healthy fats and all
Yep.
kinds of
And
good stuff.
my
So,
chickens lay them right there in the
yeah,
backyard.
Yeah.
free. It's
Yeah.
amazing. So, choose the eggs maybe, introduce it once, and
Uh-huh.
truly you should give yourself several weeks, 3 weeks really, to
Uh-huh.
see how your body handles that. And this is where, like, having a food diary and
Yeah.
a log of, okay, well, how was my mood, how are my bowels, how is my
Yeah.
skin doing,
Yeah.
all of those different
Okay.
factors, and see how your body handles it. And if you determine, okay, I was fine, then you can start reintroducing that on a regular basis. But you want to limit the variables. If
Right.
you go, okay, well, I've done this AIP for 3 months and I'm feeling great, and then you
Mm.
start doing like peppers and you're,
Yes.
on your omelet, and you throw in some,
Right.
cheese.
Okay, so
Oh,
now this what you're talking about is why I'm like a little bit nervous about it. Like I was thinking to myself, okay, I've decided, okay, I'm ready to start reintroducing things, but then I haven't reintroduced anything because I'm like nervous about it. I don't know how to go about it necessarily, and I've got some information from LaDonna about how to go about it and everything, but I'm still like, oh my gosh, what do I do? So I know, and this is how I felt in the initial elimination phase. And I remember like talking about it on the podcast and just being like, okay, I have no idea how to go forward exactly, but I'm willing to learn it. And I feel very empowered by it. So now I'm like, okay, now we're re-entering the next phase of what could come,
totally.
I was actually surprised when I looked at the list how quickly there were certain things that could be introduced, like the stages. Like stage one was pretty simple. It was just like some of the lagoons and the yolks of the eggs and things like that. But then the second stage was already like cocoa and like red wine. And I was like, wow, I'm really,
Right back to the
Right, the
booze.
important stuff.
I
Yeah.
know, I was like, really, I found that quite fascinating. I'm not in a hurry to get back to the booze. I got to admit to you, the only thing I'm potentially in a hurry to get it back to is I'd love to I don't want to share farm wine with people without like sipping on it myself too. I feel bad, like, oh, here, have some, but I can't drink any. So like you're all over there by yourself drinking the wine. I don't want to make people feel like, you're the only person.
It's like a science experiment. Let's see what happens to them in 20 minutes
I
every
know,
day. Yeah.
exactly, exactly. So that's part of one of the things that I'm ready to reintroduce. But I'm glad to be able to know that I can talk to you guys some more about this. And the special diet thing is part of the reason I wanted to you guys to come out and like let's cook together, but then let's talk about some of this because I know that special diet stuff is a part of the practice and what you guys are into with y'all's
Absolutely.
business. So will you tell us a little bit about how this specifically relates to you guys and your business and all of that?
Yeah, definitely. So I knew after working with all of the nutrition for such a long time how important it was, but I was ready to move more into that chiropractic focus, specifically with pregnancy and preconception and postpartum and infants, because that's where my like heart is. And so, along with my training, working with in the perinatal field, we went through epigenetics and nutritional
Mhm.
effects in the perinatal
Can
period.
I stop you for a second? And
Yeah.
will you define epigenetics for us? Because this is such a new fun word and I'm really excited about it. And please, like,
Yes.
yes, yes,
Okay.
give us the short blip. We'll come back to it
Super
and
Yeah.
answer
short.
questions if we have
All
to.
right. So epigenetics is basically you have your genetic code that you inherit from your parents. And epigenetics is the effect that your environment has on having those genes express themselves or not. So just because we have genes,
Yes.
it's not determinant. The
Yeah.
stressors, both chemical, physical, emotional, and you can throw in like electrical, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
any
Yeah.
stressors on
Yeah.
you, whether we're talking about like in utero, as a child, as an adult,
Yes.
throughout your life, those stressors will switch or cause your genetic code to be expressed one way or another,
Turning
back
genes
and
on or
forth.
off.
So,
Yeah.
how stressed out your mom was when she was pregnant with you actually changes your genetic code.
100%.
See, this is the part where they've made it like this some kind of woo woo something or another that people are talking about. I'm like, study it in epigenetics now. You can actually study it. And I'm
Oh,
so
yeah.
glad that you use that term because we've never talked about it on the podcast
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's this thing that I've been floating around talking about, but I've never like said, no, this is actual science and this
Yeah.
is how this works. And it's not something that we just like say, we think this is happening now.
No,
It's heavily studied now.
absolutely. And we've known about
Right.
epigenetics for decades.
Yes.
That's the more frustrating part is it's not new. It's not
Yeah.
exciting and new. This has been
Like since the 90s when they
established.
actually figured some stuff out with our
Yes,
genetics and then never
exactly.
really it just didn't get into the mainstream, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's really where I went from being focused on the chiropractic aspect to understanding that I can blend those two aspects of the nutrition and the chiropractic
Mhm.
portion together a little bit more in integrity with what I wanted to do. And so that comes in like the perinatal period of preconception work. So
Yeah.
that's a big part of what I was trained in was looking at not just mom but
Mhm.
mom and dad and
Mhm.
how the health of their bodies, how much nutrients they're taking in, how
Mhm.
well they're reacting to stress, how well their nervous system is communicating, making sure that they are both contributing the healthiest cells possible for that conception so that then
Yeah.
you have an easier, healthier pregnancy and labor and birth process to
Mhm.
have
Tell them about the
these.
morning sickness.
Mm.
Right.
And
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
so a big factor with morning sickness is the health of the the sperm donor.
Uh-huh.
And
Interesting.
so, yeah, so it's really interesting. So, the protocol that we learned about with the ICPA for chiropractors that work with children and pregnancy,
Mhm.
it's called the Schaefer protocol.
Mhm.
And so her protocol is specific to creating health for both parents in the preconceptive period, and this is where that 120 days comes
Okay.
in.
Yeah. Okay.
So for parents that have been trying to conceive and having issues with fertility,
Mhm.
for all kinds of various reasons, she has both parents get on this protocol, and it's super
Okay.
straightforward
Okay.
stuff,
Yeah.
to the point where Sean and I, when we were talking about like starting our family, we looked at the protocol which I had learned about, and
Uh-huh.
we were both like, this is too easy.
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah.
so we actually called one of my friends that has like extra training in it and went and
Uh-huh.
saw her in
Uh-huh.
Victoria. But the point is that of all of the families that Dr. Marcia Schaefer has worked with within that preconception period, out of the, I think she's at like 135 babies born to parents that were told that they were infertile by their medical
Yeah.
doctors and all their
Yes.
specialists,
Yes.
right? So
Yeah.
135 or plus babies. There was only one mother who had any morning sickness during her pregnancy, and it
Uh-huh.
was the only one whose the dad was not on protocol,
Right.
which is wild.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, that was a really
Yeah,
fun thing
maybe something
to
to it.
learn
Yeah.
about. Yeah.
Yeah, well, what this gets me to, I mean, of course it does, but the thing is that like food is medicine and food can solve all of our problems and start with the food. And I've learned that on my own repeatedly.
Hmm.
But one of the things that I'm finding out as I'm learning more about autoimmune disorders is I had premature labor and there was literally no explanation. No one could explain why. But I think my autoimmune stuff started probably when it started kicking off when I was 13
Hmm.
with a lot of, I went through a major lawnmower accident and had a lot of antibiotics and they were trying to
Hmm.
save my life and
Right,
save my
right,
leg,
right.
right? And clean me out and get all the mud and junk and grass and everything, bacteria and all this stuff out. So they cleared my whole entire, they wiped my system.
Hmm.
So when I was 19, I started having gastrointestinal issues.
Yeah.
So I was already, and then my son was born when I was 20. So I was in the midst of like the worst ulcerated colitis and all
Hmm.
kinds of stuff going on like that. And
Hmm.
so now that I know that, I'm like, I bet that's why I had preterm labor.
Dysbiosis. Actually, there's quite a bit of research on like dysbiosis. So whether we're talking about gut or whether we're talking about in the vaginal tract, that is
Hmm.
associated with preterm labor.
Yeah.
So
Because
that's.
there was no explanation. I mean, every other test that they did on my body, there was no reason. I just had preterm labor and I started it at like 21 weeks.
Hmm.
So it was like basically my body kept trying to birth the baby, even though the
Hmm.
baby wasn't anywhere. And I had
Hmm.
him, he was born 34 weeks, but I had multiple times they had to stop the pregnancy with him.
Hmm.
Of course, then when I went into having my next baby, I started out the process from the beginning much healthier
Hmm.
actively because I knew so much more
Right.
and had already set the process of having a different birth experience and all that. So it goes back to like the mental health, all of the things, like
Oh
understanding
yeah.
all of these things, but the food health and I can tell you that my stress has changed clearly. That's a big part of what's going on. And that changes really, I'm very happy about it. But my food has changed so much and the habits that I had related to all of that food have made me like a different person just like 90 days,
Well,
like into
totally.
like I'm a
Because
different
it's
person.
it's the nutrients, that it's the chemistry that you're giving your body to function on. And we talk so much about mental health being like an imbalance in the brain chemistry, but
Mhm.
that chemistry is made somewhere. It's
Right.
made by your body processing the chemicals of the foods that you're consuming.
Mhm.
And so if you're putting good nutrient dense, wet, like good quality stuff into your body, then your gut's going to start breaking that down into what it needs, and that is going to affect how your brain is
How you
picking
do
up
everything. Yeah.
everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so Sean, you're taking this on a little bit more, the food side of this in y'all's business together. Tell
Yeah.
us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so like you said, we're primarily a chiropractic office, but I got my master's in nutrition back in December. So we are going to start offering nutrition. I don't even know what we're calling it, counseling, coaching, but
Yeah.
my big point is that I think we all kind of know what we should eat. If you look at, a salad and a plate of chicken nuggets, like you know which one's going to be better for you. So we know the what to eat, but not necessarily the how to prepare it and make it taste good. So if I can tell you, hey, you need to eat, kale and all these good vegetables, and you don't know how to prepare them in a healthy way, then you're not going to do it. So part of what we're doing is pairing the nutrition counseling coaching with in-home cooking portion as well. So you learn the how, the what, and the why of why we're doing everything.
And when do you guys think that you'll like get started and move forward with some of that? Can you do some announcing of anything here on this
So yeah,
podcast? The dinner table?
my schedule's open as of May 21st. So we've
Oh,
got some people
awesome.
on the schedule already,
Good.
and yeah, we're ready to go. If there's any questions, let us know.
Well, you've got a captive audience here at the dinner table because this is the kind of stuff we talk about every week. And I've been talking about doing some of the same types of things in my own way from my own perspective. And so you've got an audience of people listening here that are looking for people to help them with food. That's part of the reason they listen to this
Yeah.
podcast.
Yeah, and
So,
like going back to what we said earlier, we make it more complicated than it needs to
oh,
be.
yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know if we even mentioned the office name yet. Where it's
Yes.
Empower Wellness
Yes.
is where we are.
Thank you. Yes.
So
Empower wellness.
Yeah.
So,
Mhm.
and part of what we're doing with the nutrition is trying to empower people as well. I don't want people to have to go and find dig a recipe out of the cupboard and make sure they've got all the ingredients on there. To empower people to know how to work with what they've got, to be able to be
Yeah.
resourceful, like you
Yep.
mentioned with the
Yep.
chicken soup, and just to have the confidence to do
Yeah.
so instead of a lot of it seems overcomplicated and scary and
Yeah.
unattainable.
Yeah, no, and stack your pantry, stack your refrigerator so that you can be creative. So that I taught people how to do a Google search a couple weeks ago, apparently, and it's this simple. You type in a few words for some ingredients that you have in Google, and then like a list of recipes will come up, and you can like
Yeah.
play around with some things, and then you can take different ideas, and then it just makes you more comfortable with
Mhm.
the idea that at this point, like tonight, and for
Mhm.
me, the last couple of dinners that I've been making, I'm the pasta primavera we made last week. We're not
Ooh.
really doing anything other than pulling out what we have and just throwing it all together. But we kind of have like an idea of different ways to make things. You
It's
make a hash,
improvisational cooking. It's
yes.
jazz. And
Yeah.
it
Woo.
doesn't have to be great every time. It just needs to be edible. And I think that's where people get nervous is, oh my gosh, is it going to taste good? Well, I mean, it's going to not taste too terrible. It's going to be
Yeah.
edible. And that's the point of the food. And then, if you didn't like the way it was, well, then maybe you
Fix it.
make it different
Yeah.
next
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. Just make it different. Try something different. But always know that great ingredients, starting with farmers market ingredients, local meats, all of that kind of stuff, nutrient dense food
Mhm.
is going to be a huge part of making it flavorful to begin with. So the name of your business is Empower Wellness. Tell us some
Yes.
more stuff about how we can get a hold of you if we're looking for you
Well, we're on the Facebook. We're
on
on
the Facebook.
we're on the Instagrams.
Do you have a
We've got
website?
a website,
Uh,
empowerwellnesscc.com for Corpus Christi.
Mhm.
Email, same thing, empowerwellnesscc@gmail.com.
Yep.
Kristin Knowlton and Sean Strawbridge. Did I say that wrong?
Sutherland.
Sutherland. I'm just making up names
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
That Sean Strawbridge is the guy that does the port, by the way.
Oh.
Oops. Oops.
Shout out.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. uh yes, thank you guys so much for coming on and talking about your special diet and cooking dinner for me, Sean, and
Thanks for having us. This
all
was fun.
kinds of
Mhm.
things like that. Folks, don't forget that my business also has a lot of things going on. Of course, I mentioned earlier that I'm going to be doing some deliveries. If you're interested in getting some of my produce deliveries, just message me and I'll put you on the list. Also, I've got a lot of coaching going on with my gardening right now. I have a special that's 2 hours for $77. I'll come hold your hand while we garden, and that could be your patio garden, that could be your backyard garden,
We may have to
that could
talk to
be.
you about that.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
please. I would love to. I would love to come out and help you guys out. And also, if you're wanting to get your homestead underway and have like a landscaping consultation, I spoke to somebody today about that. I'm super excited to work with anybody on that as well. And I have a class coming up on October. Why am I in October? I'm actually in April. On April the 29th, Saturday morning, I have an organic gardening class. I'm going to talk about regenerative agriculture here on the farm. So look me up, aislyncampbell.com. I'm of course on the Facebook, and I love that. The Insta and all of the TikTok. And I'm also on the YouTube. And YouTube, you can get this podcast. If you're listening to this podcast on YouTube, please subscribe. Also, know that I could get my dog's hair trimmed at the actual groomer if you guys were willing to support the podcast, um, there's this little thing that it's like a button you push where you just like donate a few bucks to the podcast. And that would be a huge help to everything that I'm doing out here on the farm, and support Caishen's haircut
It's
by
really what this whole
donating.
thing has been
It's
about.
all,
Just a good haircut.
yes.
That's why we're here.
Poor guy,
Yeah.
poor guy. If you could just call us up and just throw a little bit of money at this poor kid that needs a good haircut, you guys. Come on. So subscribe, like, give us some ratings for the podcast. If you love what we're doing, if you love what I'm doing, reach out to us. And then, of course, reach out to my friends, Kristin and Sean. And last but not least, you guys get to join me with the random question of the week. All right. Are you ready for this? I need
Ready.
both of you guys to answer this. All right.
Oh gosh.
Would you rather be an only child or have 10 siblings?
Only child.
Only child. All right. How many siblings do you have already?
I've got an older sister, 7 years older, and a younger brother who's 6 years younger. So I was kind of
An only child.
Yeah. We didn't really.
Yeah.
Anyways.
What about you,
That's
Kristin?
such a tough one. I think I would go with the lots of siblings.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. She's
'Cause
got a big family.
Yeah, I don't know.
How many
I like
siblings do you
people.
have?
I have a little sister. She's
Yeah.
6 years younger.
Yeah.
But I feel like I kind of lived the only child life
Yeah.
for so long.
Yeah.
And then she came around and stole my parents. And so
Yeah.
I
So
feel
you
like,
kind of,
but I feel like if
yeah.
there were more,
Yeah.
maybe I would have gotten over that,
Yeah. Yeah. I think based on just some experience that I have with having like a lot of kids around and knowing the only child life too. I actually have a brother. It's me and brother. We're 5 years apart. So I can't imagine in my parents' household with a bunch more kids. I think that would have been a loud anxiety fest. But I think that I'm better to have like a house full of people. But I also am really appreciating the quiet aloneness right
See,
now.
there's something to it, right? Just having your own
Yeah,
troubles to
so-
worry about, not everybody else.
Yeah,
And I don't,
so I'm not really sure yet. I
I don't
can't
hate
decide.
people. I don't get that.
Well, I'm an extrovert introvert Sagittarius, and so
Oh, that's why you guys.
are
get
you
along.
a
Oh,
Sag?
yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's right.
For sure.
Okay, so I like both actually.
yeah.
I like want 10 people around, and then I want you all to go to hell.
Yeah. Precisely. No more and no less.
Thank you guys for coming.